Hello, welcome to Krieger TCG, your channel for competitive Pokemon TCG content for non-professional players. Coming at you here today with a gameplay VOD review. This is from my Players Cup 3 North American Regional Finals. It is round 1. I unfortunately forgot to click record for the first couple of turns, so we're joining in at turn 3. So far I've benched a Rowlet and attached an Energy, and they used a boss's order to knock that out with the Yveltal. I was able to get 60 damage using Wind Shard attack on Rowlet, and so we'll pick it up from there. I'm going to try to explain my plays as we go along here. This was a really interesting match against a deck that played 4 Yveltals and Crushing Hammers to limit my ability to attack with Rowlet. So we've got the Rosa active. Usually want to use that and get our Decidueyes out. That's one of the most difficult things with this deck, so we'll see what route we take with that. Another basic down. We're out of our candies, which is a problem. Hopefully we can pull some off the prizes here, but we'll be limited with those for now. Start attaching energies and hope they don't boss me up or get rid of my energies with Crushing Hammer. But overall, this is a decent board state for us, and getting the early damage on the Yveltal is really nice. They're going to have to keep finding energy every turn in order to maintain pressure. We've got a good hand here. We could have considered using the Mewtwo's good to keep supporters on top of our deck to play around Marnie. But there wasn't any need that turn. We had the Gorman dies, total up our hand, so we're just going to hope we don't dead draw if they do find the Marnie. On the bright side, if they Marnie, they can't boss and continue to pressure this Decidueye. Generally in this matchup, we want to limit our bench so that they don't get too many easy prizes. The end game goal is to have 1 or 2 Decidueyes out that can't be damaged by any of their Pokemon. This was last format before Battle Style, so Phoebe didn't exist, and the only counters that they had for the Decidueyes were, at least for this player, the 1 Spiritomb and 4 Yveltals for me to get through, which ended up making it a very close match, as we'll see. They hit the Crushing Hammer and the Marnie, but thankfully they don't have an Eternatus VMAX set up to knock out the Snorlax, so we can just Gorman dies again. We're going to go slow and steady and eventually run them out of hammers. They go for the early Spiritomb bench, which I think is a misplay on their part. One of the advantages of playing Rogue is sometimes people aren't familiar with the matchup, and putting that down just makes it so valuable for us if we can find a Bird Keeper at any point to take a free knockout and not put our Decidueye in danger at all. If they put 2 damage counters on the Spiritomb, then we can use spread damage from Splitting Arrow along with the Zigzagoon and Scoop Up Net to take a knockout without it being a threat. So I'm really not too worried at this point about that Spiritomb. We're going to get rid of it when we can. We did dead draw off the Marnie that turn, but we have Gorman dies available. This is a key consistency component for the deck. You're playing a slower game plan, so you want to just take it 1 turn at a time. And since they didn't have a big threat, we didn't have to worry about it too much. We just fill up our hand again and go from there. And they use boss number 2 on the Rowlet, which is actually pretty good for us. I prefer them hitting the Rowlet there compared to taking out or damaging the Decidueye, because remember, we have all of our rare candies are in the prizes or the discard pile now. There are none left in deck. So we can get Rowlets back. We cannot get more Decidueyes until we start taking prizes. So we get the Rosa here, and we can pressure that Spiritomb like I mentioned earlier, take a 2-prize turn, and hopefully get another rare candy off the prizes. We want to bench another Rowlet. At this point in the game, the way it's developed, we have a full bench, which is not ideal, and they've already used 2 boss to take out Rowlets. So the option to wall at the end is probably not going to matter. Instead, we want to be aggressive and take these out. And if we have stuff left on our bench, we're just going to bank on them running out of bosses in the late game, since they've already burned 2. This was before they had Palpad in the deck. So they're burning some cards. They bring in the Yveltal. Miss a Crushing Hammer, that's really nice. Last turn I really should have probably gotten Rowlet on the bench with that Quick Ball. I'm not sure what I was saving it for. I may have just been excited about the Zigzagoon play to take out the Spiritomb, but there's a small misplay on my part. The other thing I could have considered was getting a Fighting Energy instead of a Grass Energy off of the Rosa, which would have allowed this Martial Arts Dojo to do more damage and potentially even one-shot this active Yveltal. We have our one of Boss's Orders in hand, which is really convenient. We can set up spread damage to knock out the Yveltal next turn, and also take a knockout on this Yveltal this turn. Really got to get a Rowlet on the bench now, because this Decidueye could go down if they can get 2 Zigzagoons and a 2 energy attack from Yveltal. Does a perfect 140 damage. So good, at least we recognize that. We got the Rowlet down in time, and we'll spread onto the bench to set up the knockout for next turn. We'll just hope they don't have the double Zigzagoon attach. If they do, that's okay. We have time. They still have 4 prizes left to take. We'll just need to eventually set up another Decidueye. We got 2 rare candies off the prizes to work with. So that bodes well for our late game. If they had not used multiple boss by this point, we'd be in big trouble with all these bench sitters. But sometimes going aggressive is the right way to play that particular game. So we'll see how it plays out. They get the double Zigzagoon ping and the clutch attack for knockout. We're going to knock out this Yveltal this turn with the Hoopa. That's why we put it down. It's worth the bench space as a 1 energy retaliation attack. And again, we're banking on them being out of boss, so we can bench a second Rowlet so they can't boss KO the Rowlet. And at this point, if we get one more Decidueye out, we're pretty much in the driver's seat. We've already knocked out 3 of their Yveltals and their Spiritomb. So there's only 1 Yveltal left to worry about. Not sure about that Crushing Hammer from our opponent. I guess they wanted to get their hand lower, and a second one as well. That's so nice for us having all the Crushing Hammers gone. Losing that doesn't affect us at all. Our goal here is to get a Decidueye set up and get attacking with it so that their Yveltal can't take out our last Decidueye. Really nice Marnie there. We get the rare candy Decidueye. Wasn't expecting that. Sometimes you get a little lucky. We do whiff energy attachment. We could have attached it pre-Marnie, but I wasn't expecting to get candy Decidueye combo off of just 5 cards, and leaving an energy attached to the bench is really risky, given that they could Boss's Orders it up. So now we get the Rosa for the energy. We'll just attach. They're out of Crushing Hammers, and they have only 1 Boss's Orders left. If I remember right, they played 3. So what we can do now is just attach, slow and steady. We have the Phione, so we can never deck out. The only thing we're worried about is them starting to pressure our Decidueye with their last Yveltal before we can get enough energy attachments. But since they burn those hammers on the Hoopa, we're in really good shape, despite the kind of weird way that this game's played out. So I'm checking the discard pile there, keeping track of their Boss's Orders, making sure this is a safe line of play. We get Marnied, and we unfortunately do not have a Grass Energy. So we'll use the Bird Keeper, and now we're in a weird spot. I could use Wind Shard and Phione and damage this Yveltal, but then they can knock out this Rowlet without having to use their last Boss's Order, which puts me in a worse position. Despite being 1 attack away, it opens up a new loss condition, which is a huge problem for me. So I make a really good play here, at least in my review of the game. I think it's a good play of walling with the Decidueye. We're going to trust that it can tank a hit, and then pressure it aggressively the next turn. If we get our Grass Energy and a Scoop Up Net, we can knock it out in 1 hit, since we have the Martial Arts Dojo in play. Derail again. They don't have the bench space for multiple Zigzagoon pings, so they can't knock out our second Decidueye like they did the first one. We'll research that out. We get the Grass Energy and the Scoop Up Net. Perfect. So now we have our knockout. We had probably a turn to work with there, but it's nice to just get that knockout in one turn. All their counters are gone now. The only thing they could attack with potentially is a Zigzagoon, and they have one boss left with 2 prizes left to take. Oh, this was a good game of adjusting the game plan on the fly. They bosses orders us so aggressively in the early game, which feels really bad, but ends up being pretty okay. Because it makes our support Pokemon so much more valuable. We got so much value out of that Zigzagoon because we could use our Scoop Up Nets for that instead of using them to limit our bench and take easy prizes off the board. So there's the last boss. They go for a deck out strategy, which is a good thought on their play. I think when you're behind in the late game, you should go for stuff like this. We see our decks are both running out of cards, but we have more cards in deck, and also we have Phione to loop indefinitely. So we're never going to lose a deck out game. They can take this knockout, and then they're out of boss, and they have no way to damage Decidueye other than with these Zigzagoons, which it does 30 damage on a coin flip, I think. So they take the knockout, but they're out of bosses, so it doesn't matter. We'll have the game in a couple turns, either by spread damage on these Zigzagoons, or we'll have it by them decking out. And that's the last card. And there's the Scoop. So we had an next turn by either way. We'll take the prize just to say we did it, but we had the win by deck out as well. So you want to think when you're playing a rogue deck like this, a walling deck, you want to identify your alternate win cons and plan for them accordingly. That's a theme you'll see throughout the whole tournament here, is me having practice with this deck. I can recognize those usually a step or two ahead of my opponents. Sometimes it just comes down to the deck building and what's available for them, to provide counters. So I'll skip ahead a little bit to game 2 here. They start an Yveltal, get an attachment there. If I were on my opponent's side, I would actually look to set up a VMAX, Eternatus VMAX first. And the reason for that is you want to take cheap prizes early on without having these Yveltals pressured by Bird Keeper, Rowlet Snipes, etc. You want to save your Yveltals for the later game in combination with hammer pressure to limit my energy attachments. That's how I'd approach it anyway. If you can get 2, 3, 4 prizes with your Eternatus VMAX, then probably your Yveltals will be enough to carry the last couple of prizes. But if you burn all your Yveltals early, like you saw in that first game, they don't have any way to damage me in the late game. So I'm going through and checking my prizes here. We've got all our rare candies, which is always good to see. Martial Arts Dojo is available. Thinking about how I want to approach the turn here and checking prizes at the same time. That's why you see it taking some time. By getting the Whirlpool Suction, we can pressure what's the active Pokemon now and do some damage to it. The downside of this play is we don't get multiple Rowlets up. But since they decided to go in with Yveltal early, I'm going to try to punish that play and pressure with Wind Shard early while I get my board set up at the same time. And so I really like the Bird Keeper version of this deck because it gives you that option where if you're just playing like tag calls, a lot of them are playing now, you don't have that option. We put the Bird Keeper on top of the deck so that our hand is live, even with them playing the Marnie. So that's a very, very key thing you want to do in the early game. So we have Bird Keeper again. We can continue to pressure these Yveltals while we set up. We are sacrificing some prizes, and we're sacrificing some Rowlets for this. But the idea is the late game, they won't have anything left to damage us. So I still think this is the right line, even though our bench is less robust than we'd like. We play double Ordinary Rod so that we can recycle those Rowlets and eventually get multiple down. A lot of times you'll use your Rosa in the mid game. If you take an aggressive approach like this, you use the Rosa to get multiple Rowlets down instead of usually use the Rosa to get the Decidueyes out. But it's perfectly reasonable to Rosa for either a Pokemon search, get a Rowlet for your Pokemon, and an energy attachment. If you're out of Rowlets, you can Rosa for the Ordinary Rod as well to start recycling them. So now we have the option of either using Rosa or Bird Keeper. It's a tough call. We whiff on the Stellar Wish, which doesn't help. It would have been really nice to get, I think if I had gotten a Pokemon Search off of that Stellar Wish, then playing the Bird Keeper would be correct because I could get a second Rowlet down. But I don't want to be too slow in setting up Decidueyes because that risks us losing the game just due to giving up too many prizes. So we'll go for some Hoopa pressure for an attack, and we can get another Rowlet down as well. This is a tough hand to know what to discard off the Quick Ball. We got rid of the Jirachi there, which wasn't ideal, but we want to build our hand and not dead draw. Is always a consideration with this deck. So the plan is to Bird Keeper next turn and to put on pressure with Wind Shard again, or we can Boss's Order and Evil Admonition since we just got that off the prizes. So those are both good options for us. Depends how many abilities they have in play. If we could one-shot that Yveltal, it would definitely be worth the trouble. We're also looking for some extra damage here, or drawing more cards so that we can set up Decidueyes. So let's see, there's 1, 2, 3 abilities in play. We're doing 70 damage to the Yveltal, which is good enough. You know, it's puts the same amount of damage on that we'd get out of a Wind Shard and using our Bird Keeper. But it allows us to keep our Rowlets on the bench. So if we draw hot off of this, we could potentially get multiple Decidueye set up next turn. There's the Boss's Orders on the Rowlet, but that's okay. We made them use that resource. And we can now Bird Keeper and finish off that Yveltal. We shuffle the Rowlets back into the deck. We were trying to draw into that off the Bird Keeper, but we didn't hit any of the Rowlets or any Pokemon Search. So now we're looking at no Rowlets on the bench with multiple prizes, or only 3 prizes left for our opponent to take. But we've taken out enough of their threats here that we can very conceivably win the game with just a single Decidueye, because they're already down multiple Yveltals. They've used a couple of Boss's Orders. We have the Spiritomb hitting the bench, so we want to see if we can damage that as well. But probably this next turn, we'll need to Rosa to get multiple Rowlets out. We can do a little bit of damage here with Hoopa. That's not bad. The biggest downside to taking this route, which we'll see in a minute, is when you're setting up your Rowlets in the late game, you're quite vulnerable to energy disruption since you need 2 energies. But given the way our hands have played out, I think this is a pretty good line of pressuring the threats on their side while steadily getting set up ourselves. And we just have to hope they either don't have their hammers left, or they don't find them at the right time, or they don't flip heads. Any of those is fine. I just checked their discard pile and you see no hammers gone, so that's a big concern. But there's not much we can do to play around it. They swing the matchup toward 50-50. I think it's not quite there if the Decidueye player knows what they're doing, but it is a legitimate out for the Etern side that they just don't have. We're going to use Marnie here, or sorry, a Scoop Up Net to get the Mewtwo off the bench. Unlike last game, our bench is pretty clean right now, so we want to wall with our last Decidueye, and we don't want to bench anything else. We only have 1 Scoop Up Net left. We can't bank on finding that, and they have Boss's Orders left. So if we leave things on the bench, easy prizes for them, we'll just lose. So we have a nice bench here. We're not going to do anything else with it. We want to try to take out this last Yveltal and the Spiritomb. We have the ability here in order to take out the Spiritomb, so that's one less problem to deal with. And we got to hope that our 1 Decidueye at the end of the game here can carry us. But sometimes you draw into your Decidueyes and not your rare candies. Downsides of playing stage 2. So the hope there was to draw into a rare candy. We have all 4 of them, all 4 of them in deck. Still haven't seen them. We get a rod off the prizes. They hit the boss when they need it. That's just devastating. We can still potentially take out these Eviltalls, although they haven't used their Zigzagoons yet either. So you can see this game, my opponent hit pretty much everything in the right order, which makes the matchup tough for us. That's why this is a close one and an interesting game, despite them basically not having a lot of answers. The issue we have now is we have to try to get this Decidueye out, but we don't have our candy in hand, so we drop it. We did check prizes. We knew the third Decidueye was in deck, and we hit the combo off the research. So we're still in it, but now we have to avoid hammerheads, and we really wanted that attachment last turn to stick so we could start pressuring these Eviltalls now. But instead, they get the boss KO, then they get the hammerheads. Now they can damage this over the course of a couple turns, and there's really nothing we can do. If they had missed the boss or missed the hammerheads, we'd be in the game at least, but they would still be ahead. But this one's just not going our way. So they'll damage it, and I think I'll probably just scoop here. Really nothing else to be done. There was no time limit in this tournament, if I remember right. So there wasn't any incentive to scoop. There really are not any outs here for me. They're down to one prize, and they can just three-shot while I try to get energy attachments lined up. One attack here doesn't do us any good. We can one-shot one of these Eviltalls. So if we had an extra turn, we got the basic fighting. With the Dojo, we're one-shotting Eviltalls. So you can see if we were a turn or two ahead as far as taking their Eviltalls out, then we were in this game. But the fact that they got the boss KO at the exact right time, we couldn't get our energy attachments stacked up, we were late to set up Decidueye, and then they hammered the energy off. That's their win condition. They played to it really well that game. And so that's just one of the downsides of playing a deck like Decidueye is when you have competent opponents with outs, they sometimes can pull it out like that. You're playing a rogue deck, your inherent strategy is less powerful than theirs. So unless you sequence things right, or they misplay, a lot of times those are your win conditions you're going on. We'll get into this more later, but part of the reason I chose this deck is I wanted to finish top 4, and I didn't feel like I could do that playing a meta deck. There's just too much randomness involved, and my skill level I didn't think was high enough to be able to expect to do it. So game 3 here, getting off with a win would be huge in a double elimination tournament. We're going to start with Stellar Wish, grab a Rosa for next turn. We really wanted a Pokemon Search off of that, but what can you do? Sometimes you get all those Pokemon and no way to search out more. What we can do, though, and this is the right play, I saw the Rosa first, but then I realized I can't have only one Rowlet on the bench here. We need multiple Rowlets, and all of these cards are expendable. They're pretty much bad for the matchup. The Snorlax is big so that we don't dead draw off of Marnies in the mid-game, and we have Scoop Up Nets to limit our bench later. So there's the second Rowlet. All in all, a really good turn, and we're set up to get a Decidueye next turn. They get Crushing Hammer Tails, then Tails, then a Heads. Love to see 3 of those gone because they're so much better in the late game. Nothing my opponent could do differently there. He got to thin his hand down and got rid of my energy attachment, which is good. He had to research to draw cards that turn anyway. It's just convenient for us that he hit the hammers early and not late. You saw how devastating they could be late there at the end of game 2. So they have an out, but they have to hit things at the right order, where we just really have to set up at some point and put some damage on that way. So we've got a really good hand here. We can win shard, but there's not really any reason to do that. There's no good targets on the bench. So what we want to do instead is just wall with Decidueye this turn. I could have promoted or attached differently so that I could Bird Keeper and then wall with Decidueye, but I actually want to save the Bird Keeper for when they do bench a threat, then I can win shard. So what I'm doing is going to attach to the active. I'll set up the stage 2 in the active. We'll check our prizes because this is actually our first deck search of the game. We will make them bench one of the threats, and then we have the Bird Keeper ready to go to pressure that threat immediately. And that's the right way to approach this hand. We're not in a rush. We have our energy attachments. We want to force them to do something and then counter that. And we have what we need, so we don't need to give them free prizes. We want them to waste bosses. They get their 4th hammer and hit heads. That's very unfortunate. They benched the Spiritomb for us, which is very satisfying that we had saved the Bird Keeper for exactly this reason. We'll get rid of that threat immediately, and we can attach to the back Decidueye without putting it in harm's way. Unfortunately, we do have both of our special energies in hand right now, which means we're susceptible to derail from Yveltal. But we should be able to put on enough pressure to counteract that as long as we keep finding attachments, because they are out of crushing hammers now. They've used all 4. They got 2 out of 4 heads, which slowed us down. But having the Bird Keeper option to do damage without any energies, having single energy attackers like Hoopa in the deck, really make this a more dynamic archetype than I think a lot of people give it credit for. Definitely more dynamic than the way people are building it nowadays. And part of that's, I think, why it's not getting results anymore, but also it's just more that people are ready for it, and it's better as a surprise. Nobody was expecting this deck in this tournament, and you want to keep an eye on card counts in the meta and what decks people are playing so that you know it's a good time to play Rogue, rather than just playing Rogue all the time. They take the knockout on the Rowlet. That's fine. We have the Rosa available. We can do some damage here. I don't love that promotion there. I think damaging the benched Decidueyes there is actually better. But I'm going to take this slow and try to get more attachments on my bench, which this is also reasonable. We do have no follow-up after the Rosa here. So let's see what we get here. Rod to get some of these back. We need more Rowlets, okay, over the course of the game. And the Mew doesn't do a whole lot. We're mostly just thinning that out of the deck. Hypothetically, it could be useful for finishing off a Yveltal, but mostly we're there just to thin it out of our deck. Now we've got ourselves a big old hand. We can potentially one-shot these Yveltals. So we went for, instead of pressure, setting up a second Decidueye. The advantage to this play is we're behind on prizes still. So even without a 20 spread from Decidueye, we could hypothetically one-shot these Yveltals anyway. Awesome top deck there to get our second Decidueye out. And now we have energy attachments as well. And so this is a nice payoff from our choice to take the turn slowly. And Snorlax, we're going to actually play no support of this turn because all we need are energy attachments now that we have 2 Decidueyes out. So we want to wait to research until we've attached all of our energies. There's no rush. We can thin a card out here and discard the Snorlax. It's pretty useless now. We're not going to bench anything else this game because we only have 3 prizes left to give up. We have 3 Pokemon in play. We don't want to give them easy boss targets to potentially lose the game here. They boss the Hoopa, that's fine. We have our 2. This allows us to promote the other Decidueye and not put our special energy in harm's way. And we can finally start putting pressure on these Yveltals here. Having 2 out is just such a good position to be in. We want to just draw through our deck here. We're not looking for anything in particular. The Bird Keeper lets us draw cards, which is nice. It does put our special energy at risk of getting derailed, but I think we have enough draw at this point, and they're out of crushing hammers, that I was expecting that I'll be able to find energy attachments as the game goes along, and sure enough, there's the grass energy in hand. So they can Zigzagoon Ping and 2-shot one of these, but I don't see much of a way for them to get their second Decidueye down. They have Yveltals, 2 of them set up. There should be 2 more in the deck available. That Crobat means they can't double Zigzagoon Ping to reach for a 2-shot, which is super nice for us. The right play here, I think, would be to derail and get rid of that special energy on my side, because they're going to have to 3-shot anyway. They're digging for switch. Crobat again means they can't start setting up extra Yveltals, and they couldn't even draw there. I think that was their second Crobat bench of the turn. So that was certainly helpful. And then they choose not to discard the energy, which is really nice. We would have been down a grass energy if they had chosen to derail there, which that was a legitimate loss condition for us. But our opponent just either didn't see the line or they were unnerved by the threat of Decidueyes. I like to think that's the explanation, but regardless, we're going to take a dominant lead here. There's still an Yveltal or two left to deal with. We don't care about Crobat's attack at all with this Decidueye because we have the special energy attached. So that negates all special conditions and makes us immune to poison, which they don't see that coming either. So some misplays from my opponent's side here. Overall, I think they played this series pretty well. The biggest thing I would have done differently on their side is attacking with VMAXs early instead of Yveltals early. Trying to save Crushing Hammers, obviously, they just drew them all so fast this game. And we've got a nifty play here. We can speed up the game a little bit, do 130 damage to this VMAX to take our last 3 prizes with the boss's order. So that'll do it for round 1. Thanks for tuning in. I appreciate you spending the time. This is a little bit of a longer one, given that it went the full 3 games and the games were pretty close. The next couple rounds will probably go quicker if you want to tune in for those, but there's some interesting things to talk about as far as metagaming and being prepared for specific matchups, so those should be interesting as well. Please give me a like and subscribe if you don't mind, and watch the whole way through. I really appreciate it. You can check me out on Twitch. I'm trying to stream at least a couple times a week, but my schedule is pretty irregular lately, but feel free to give me a follow over there. Reach out on Twitter. Happy to answer any questions people have about the deck or just talk about Pokemon or life in general. So hope you have a great day, and I'll see you later.